Of all the twisted tales we've explored, all the ghost stories and antechambers of human evil, nothing can truly prepare you for this one. Tonight, we redescending into a darkness so profound that words like horrific and gruesome feel insultingly small. There are some lines, some boundaries of depravity that we think are impossible for a human being to cross. We tell ourselves that nobody could ever do something like that. But what if someone did? What if a husband and wife, living right under the noses of their community, harbored a secret that was rotting, quite literally, in their refrigerator? This is the story of Dmitry and Natalia Baksheev, a Russian couple whose love story was written in blood and seasoned with the unthinkable. Over the course of 2 decades, they would lure, murder, and cannibalize more than 30 people. But they didn't just consume their victims. They preserved them, pickling their remains in jars. And then, in a final act of stomach-turning evil, served them to unsuspecting dinner guests. A word of warning. This story contains graphic descriptions of murder and cannibalism. If that's something you can't handle, I strongly suggest you click away now. For everyone else, steel yourselves. We're about to open the door to a real-life house of horrors. Our story doesn't start at the beginning, but at the end. It begins on September 11th, 2017, on a construction site in the Russian city of Krasnodar. A crew of road workers stumbled upon a lost cell phone lying on the ground. Like anyone would, they picked it up. They were surprised to find it had no password. And driven by that universal flicker of human curiosity, they opened the photo gallery. What they saw would haunt them forever. The first few photos were mundane, but then an image stopped them cold. It was a selfie of a man with dark, hollowed eyes, proudly posing with a severed human hand in his mouth, its mangled wrist dangling from his lips. Shock turned to horror as they scrolled further. They saw pictures of a woman's dismembered head on a platter, grotesquely decorated with oranges and olives. They saw another photo, a close-up of a human scalp torn from a skull. Terrified, they did the only thing they could. They immediately called the police. When authorities arrived, they quickly identified the owner of the phone via its SIM card, a 35-year-old man named Dmitry Baksheev. When they asked the construction crew if they knew him, their blood ran cold. "He works with us," one of them said. "He just left for the day." Police didn't wait. They raced to the address on file, a dormitory connected to a local military aviation academy. There they found Dmitry and his wife Natalia in their small apartment. They were immediately taken into custody. At the station, investigators separated them, hoping to crack their story. They started with Natalia. They showed her the photos from the phone. Natalia stared at them, her face a mask of practiced shock. She gasped. She recoiled. She played the part of a horrified innocent. Her performance was so over the top, so transparently fake, that the investigators knew instantly she was lying. She spun a wild tale, claiming she'd stumbled upon the dismembered body parts in the woods, and for some bizarre reason, decided to take pictures with her husband's phone before heading home. The police just stared at her. A dismembered body, fine, but a selfie? Selfie with a victim's hand in your husband's mouth? Her story was falling apart, and she had no answer. With her lies exposed, investigators secured a warrant to search the couple's apartment. They had no idea they were about to step into the heart of the nightmare. The apartment was a disaster, a hoarder's den piled high with junk and rotting garbage. But beneath the squalor, a far more sinister reality was hiding. The first clue came when they searched the kitchen. Tucked away in a drawer, they found not one but 10 different cell phones. As they powered them on, they uncovered a hidden history of horror. The phones were filled with photos of Dmitry and Natalia smiling at parties, hanging out with friends, and looking like any other couple. But as investigators scrolled deeper, the truth was revealed. There were photos of plates of food served at these parties. Only the main course wasn't chicken or beef. It was human. One dish stood out, a severed human head, carefully prepared. The hair had been scraped off. Olives were placed in the eye sockets, and a lemon was perched on the nose, all of it garnished with orange slices. The date stamp on the photo was chilling. December 28th, 1999. This had been going on for nearly 2 decades. The search continued. They found gruesome wigs, which on closer inspection weren't wigs at all. They were human scalps, crudely preserved with the skin still attached. In a corner of the home, they found a cookbook, handwritten by Natalia herself. Its pages contained recipes and instructions on how to properly cook and prepare human meat. Beside it was a video CD, labeled Video Lessons for Cannibals. But the most horrific discovery was yet to come. In the couple's basement, police located a freezer. As they opened the door, the stench was overwhelming. The freezer was packed solid with glass jars, the kind you'd use for pickling cucumbers or tomatoes. But when they looked closer, they saw they weren't preserving vegetables. Inside the jars, floating in brine, were the pickled remains of human beings. There were so many jars that the police couldn't safely transport them individually. They had to load the entire freezer onto a truck and haul it away. Forensic analysis would later confirm the unspeakable. The couple had butchered and preserved at least 19 different people in that freezer alone. With the evidence piled high, the interrogations began in earnest. Faced with proof from her own home, Natalia's act finally shattered. Her memory suddenly became crystal clear. Looking at photos of missing persons, she began naming names. She identified from memory over 30 people she and her husband had murdered. Now it was Dmitry's turn. Trying to save himself, he confessed to everything. Yes, they murdered people. Yes, they ate them. And then he added a horrifying new detail. They would pickle the human meat and supply it to local food stalls and cafes, passing it off as animal meat. He even detailed their last kill, which had happened just 10 days before their arrest. The victim was a waitress they had met online. They invited her over for drinks. At one point, Natalia, feigning a jealous rage, stormed out of the room. It was all part of the plan. With the woman alone and disoriented, Dmitry grabbed her and slit her throat. It was this waitress's hand that he had held in his mouth for that sickening selfie, a trophy from their final kill. Natalia made one last desperate attempt to escape justice. She claimed she was mentally insane, telling the judge about a visit she'd made to a mental hospital years ago. But the court pulled the records. The official diagnosis from that visit was clear. Natalia Baksheeva was perfectly sane. Dmitry Baksheev was sentenced to 12 years in a maximum security prison. Natalia was given a slightly lesser sentence of 11 years in a penal colony. The story, however, doesn't quite end there. On February 16, 2020, Dmitry died in prison from complications of untreated tuberculosis. Natalia remains alive, serving out her sentence. After the trial, someone from within the police department leaked the photos from the phones to the public. The images went viral, and Russia was gripped by a national horror story. Rumors swirled. Some said Natalia had used her job as a nurse to serve human meat pies in the military academy cafeteria. Others claimed the couple couldn't have acted alone, that they must have been part of a larger, organized cannibal clan. While these theories were never proven, they leave a lingering, terrifying question. The case of the cannibal couple of Krasnodar serves as a brutal reminder that the most terrifying monsters are not figures of fiction. They are real. They live next door, and sometimes they even invite you over for dinner.